Hello, Internet people, and welcome to episode 7 of the Jordan Powers Experience. My name is Jordan Powers, and on today's episode, we are with the one and only Cassandra Cooper. Cassandra is a local Kelowna resident who, as of recently, headed out to Egypt to kind of improve upon her instructing certificates in freediving. And while she was out there, you know, as most of us do, she just happened to break a couple of Canadian national records, right? No big deal. No big deal. So let me read out a couple of these records that she broke while she was out there. So she is the number one Canadian woman in the dynamic bifins competition, diving 156 meters. That's wild. I don't know if you guys know much about freediving, but basically you're heading down into the water and you have no oxygen tank on. You're just doing it in one breath, going down as far as you can and then coming back up. I can't hold my breath for longer than like 15 seconds, so that shit blows my mind. She's also the number 2 woman in the static, holding her breath for 6 minutes and 18 seconds. And she's also the number 2 woman in the constant weight bifins competition, diving 67 meters. She's looking to go to the 2021 Freediving World Championship in Limassol, Cyprus, and I'm going to put some links down below where you guys can go and support not only an amazing human being, but a local Kelowna resident who happens to be a world-class athlete and one of the best in Canada, if not one of the best in the world. So please go down to that description, help her out, support her, follow her on Instagram, do all the things. She's an amazing talent and an amazing person, and I was super stoked to talk to her. So before we get into the conversation, I'm gonna read a couple quick things from my sponsors, starting with Oakham Cannabis. Oakham Cannabis is a privately owned, family-run craft producer located in Kelowna, BC. In their facility, they are determined to produce the highest quality of bud in their state-of-the-art Roto-Grow rotational gardening system, as well as premium full-spectrum CO2 extracted oil, all done in-house with their Apex extraction unit. All of their growing is done indoors using a hydroponic system to create a clean and controlled growing environment. Oakham has been producing clean, high-quality, high-THC cannabis for almost 2 years now, and their controlled conditions allow them to produce cannabis that is free of pesticides and mold without irradiating. They recycle, employ organic practices, and are energy efficient. Keep an eye out for their first 2 products coming to market, Smoke 'em and Discover, which I can guarantee and confirm now are going to be on the BC market soon. So I'll also be interviewing G Baby, one of the guys behind Oakham, who kind of helped me out with getting the sponsorship, and we'll be talking about their products and maybe doing a little taste tester. My second sponsor is Garnish Barware. Garnish Barware is trusted behind some of Canada's busiest cocktail bars. They do custom engraved barware. You can see this cool little shingamabob right here. I think that's the technical term for it. And you can also see this cool little shoopty-doopty, which is also the technical term for it. I think, you know, there we go, Old Faithful. All that is custom engraved here in Kelowna, BC by my man Griffin. So go to www.garnishbarware.com, check them out. And yeah, you know, without further ado, enjoy my conversation with Cassandra Cooper. And look at this. Look at that, clouds. If you've been in the Okanagan and Kelowna recently, you know that we've been just absolutely hammered by smoke this summer. So go out there and enjoy the sun and the clouds as well. But listen to my podcast while you're doing it. Throw your headphones in.
Is your fridge? Should we bring your fridge in here? Oh wait, no, we're taking a break.
We can have a break, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a mobile fridge at this point. Mm-hmm. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Cassandra.
Jordan.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Great.
You're stealing my questions on the podcast already.
No, okay. We'll just talk about me from this point forward.
From here on out, I don't want to hear a single thing about me on this episode.
Oh, me either. Just kidding.
How are you doing? I already asked that, but
I'm good.
Yeah,
been busy. I've been really busy. I feel like I'm only in Kelowna for a really short amount of time, so I'm kind of cramming a lot into like a month and a half.
Trying to make the most of the summer, it seems like.
Pretty much, yeah.
Well, I am beyond excited to have you on the Jordan Powers Experience. This is episode 6. Mm-hmm. Sorry, 7. Lucky number 7. And I have been a fan of yours for a while, as I was saying off camera. You went to Egypt this past year, and the content you've been posting on Instagram has been amazing.
Yeah, it's been a crazy experience, really. It's been a lot in a short amount of time, but it was all welcomed, like it wasn't unexpected per se, but it was a lot.
Is it hard to look back on the past year and like put it all into context?
Yeah.
Or
well, even just if I talking about last year, talking about 2 years ago, I mean, obviously from year to year things change so much, but the lifestyle change has really been big. So,
and like during a year where it's been probably crazy for most people,
Mm-hmm.
but
yeah, I can't even say that I've had everyone's had a crazy year, so I was lucky, but it was also it was a challenge. It was challenging. It was challenging to do everything and kind of keep momentum going, but once you start, it's hard to I don't know, once you start doing something that you're passionate about, it's like addicting.
Of course. Yeah.
I was like, is this what this is? Is this what this feels like?
Is this my life? Yeah. Can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you've been up to this past year?
Yeah. Well, I was born here in Kelowna, and I am currently a freediving instructor and competitor. So I've been freediving for the past year, really. I've been depth training for just about 6 months, and then I've been training overall for about a year. Because a lot of the time, you can't be by the water. You don't have access to depth all the time. A lot of people that freedive don't. So there's a lot you can do outside of the water. But anyway, I have been training in Egypt for the past 6 months. So I originally went there because I wanted to instruct. So during COVID, I wanted to change things up, and I wanted to start freediving again. And I did some looking into what was happening for freediving in BC, and it wasn't much. It was really happening on the West Coast. So anyway, I twists and turns, I went to Egypt, started my training there, and then fell down the rabbit hole and started competing. And now I've had 3 competitions so far, and I've been training for a year, and I am now going to the World Championships in freediving, and I'm on Team Canada. So
that is wild. You're being very humble right now.
It's a lot. It's weird. It's a lot to talk about.
Of course. Yeah. So what I know of your experience in Egypt and your most recent kind of freediving journey is that you've made Team Canada, and you've broken some records, or
national records. Yes,
Canadian records.
Yeah, Canadian records. So freediving it's an international sport, right? So in certain places it's a lot more recognized or a lot more well known, like places in Europe and Russia, like the Russian Federation. France is pretty much that's where ADA came from, the Freediving Association, and then the other one came from Russia, Molchanovs. So there's ADA and Molchanovs, and that's where there's a lot of the records are different. The culture's different. Here, right. It's the West Coast and the East Coast, and it's a lot of Spiros, and then cold water freedivers. So the communities just are different all over the place.
And it seems like there's a bunch of different categories of freediving, and especially competition. Can you kind of elaborate on the competitions that you're competing in?
Yeah. So I did the ones that I did earlier this year they were all in Egypt. One of them was, so as they're saying, they're under ADA, which is the Freediving Association. It's like I said, one of the largest freediving associations. And there were 3 ADA competitions that I did. And one of them was a depth competition, or 2 of them were depth, and then one of them was dynamic, which is like a pool competition. So I did my first one in Dahab, which is where I was in Egypt, and that was at the Blue Hole. And it was a slightly smaller competition than the other one I did, which was the Freediving World Cup at Freediving World Charm. So I did my first competition in Dachau, and that was depth. And there's 4 disciplines that you can do. So there's monofin, bifins, there's free immersion, and no fins. And then there's 2 other ones, which is a variable weight and no limits. So there's, yeah. I'm still not very good at talking about it in a way that I don't fan out and start talking about everything.
Well, it's not the most well-known sport in the world, right? And I was trying to brush up on my knowledge skills and stuff like that before having this interview, and because to me, I always thought freediving was like with a scuba tank and stuff like that, right? But obviously it's not. It's free diving. There's no oxygen. You're basically holding your breath. You're going down to insane depths, and you're basically on your own out there.
Yeah. I think, and I almost want to disclaim that this is just my own knowledge from my experience, and I try to be as I guess correct as I can be when I'm talking about it, especially to other people when it's not as well known, because I'm almost like I could really say anything.
Well, it's a pretty new kind of like sport also, no? Or?
I mean, it's been around for a while, but the knowledge on it and the momentum with the actual community, like the amount of people enrolling in competitions, taking courses, there's now like different associations. So it is growing. It's grown a lot in the last 10 years.
Yeah, wow. And it seems like Egypt is a pretty solid spot to train as well. I was listening to one lady's podcast, which I wish I could remember now. But she was based out of Egypt. It was like the free diving podcast, I think is what it's called.
Oh, yeah, okay. I'm not sure. I know which there's the freediving cafe, and then there's a freediving podcast.
Yeah.
I think there's 2.
It was the first one that popped up on YouTube and Google when I searched it out. But yeah, she said that she was in Egypt, and I was like, damn, it must be like the spot to go right now.
I mean, it is. The thing is that there's not a lot of places where there's depth availability, and also it's shallow enough so that you can swim out, so you don't need a boat, which is really valuable for training, because otherwise it's I guess it adds up, and sometimes it's just not as available. So Egypt, for example, you swim out the blue hole, and it's right there. It's like it's a 5-minute swim, maybe less, to get to, it was 92 meters at the blue hole.
Holy crap.
Yeah. But the thing is that's like an epicenter for freedivers. And with COVID, so what happened with me is that I went there, and it was during COVID, and I got a lot of, you really shouldn't go. And I was like, man, maybe I shouldn't go. But I did it with some encouragement. I went, and it turns out that there were a lot of freedivers there that spend some of their year there to train. But since COVID was happening and everywhere else was kind of like how it was with COVID and Egypt, things were kind of as normal.
Right.
So all these freedivers were just there freediving together. And it's these guys that come there, and a lot of them were world class, like good friends now that are incredible freedivers I got to dive alongside.
Did surrounding yourself with, I mean, I already feel like I know the answer to this, but it's surrounding yourself with world-class freedivers, did that kind of make you level up? And I
mean, I don't think if I said no, I'd be lying. Even if I didn't believe it.
I don't need nobody.
So yeah, I would say so. I would say I was like incredibly motivated to do it. I was incredibly motivated to do it. I basically funded like the whole trip because of COVID and working and everything. Anyways, I basically I invested completely into freediving, to be there as long as I was. And the progress was just so apparent and enticing, and I wanted to do it. And the only reason I would have gone home was because I needed to come back and start working again.
Right.
So anyway, it was definitely because of who I was with.
Well, it's an exciting lifestyle, it seems like. How did this whole kind of freediving journey start for you?
Well, it started, I was 18, and I was living in Thailand for 6 months when, right after my birthday, my 18th, I left, and I taught for 4 months in a village in Thailand, and then I came down to the south and I discovered freediving. I met someone who freedived and didn't know what it was. No idea. And thought it was the coolest thing. So I did the course. I did my A2, which is one of the first certifications you can get. And then I went home and that was it. But then when during COVID, I was just thinking of what I should do next. And I wanted to get back into freediving. And so I wanted to see what was happening here. And like I said, I contacted some scuba shops here, and they were like, no, we got no freediving going on. Contacted some people in Van and Victoria, and then I actually drove down to meet them just to like talk about freediving. And I was like, I want to be an instructor and I want to work my way to it. I don't want to I want to work my way to it. So I asked for their help, and then I messaged one of them, and he works in Vancouver, but he was in Egypt at the time. And he was like, well, how about you just come out to Egypt?
And you were just chatting with him online? Or?
We were chatting and we were emailing because he has a school out there. And then he was in Egypt, and he said, just come to Egypt because I'm not coming back to Canada anytime soon because everyone's here and there's freediving and there's freedivers and it's like life as usual. So I went there and met him, and then I met everybody, and it was just the nicest community of people I've ever met. So I like to compare it to like surfing, when surfing first started in like the 60s, 70s, and there were these communities all over the place of people like all over the world, but they all knew each other.
Are they like kind of like groundbreaking kind of trendsetters in freediving right now, or like? Definitely.
I mean, there was Vertical Blue just happened this past weekend, which is a freediving competition in the Bahamas, and 4 world record. Oh, I might even be wrong. There might have been more. Lots of national records. A few world records got broke.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And did you have the intention of breaking national records when you first went out? Or?
I did joke about it a lot because when I got to Dahab, so many people had world records. I was like, do I need a world record to dive with these guys?
Like, how do I get in the club? I got to break a world record?
Yeah, I was like, fine.
What do I got to do?
Yeah, so, and no, it was, I decided to just extend my trip. And this is the story you'll hear a lot in Dahab. I just extended my trip and kept extending and extending and extending. And you just become friends with everybody. And there's all these like group chats, I guess, that we all go into, and we plan dives together and plan events together. And so it was amazing. And I just kind of stepped into it. And I'm lucky that I knew Luca beforehand. And now I'm actually working with him, which is hilarious. Which is so funny.
Wild. And so, okay, so to give some context to the audience again, when you're free diving, I think I saw on your Instagram that you competed in going depth and going like really far down, and then you did one where it was just holding your breath for a very long time. And are you static in a pool at that point, or are you going like across a pool and kind of back and forth? I
did both, actually, which is funny that you said. There's a few ways. You can basically do all the depth disciplines in the pool, except for the variable weight and no limits.
And variable weight, that's like having weight attached to you, or
it's when you have, so variable weight is when you're holding a weight and it takes you down and then you fin back up, or then you do whatever discipline you're doing back up. And then no limits is when you're on a sled. So that's when you're holding onto a sled and the sled brings you down, and then you get lifted back up the line. So that's where the like crazy deep 150, 200 meter dives.
And so are you choosing the depth that sled takes you to? And then
You do.
What if you go too far?
Well, the line's set at a certain rate, and I actually don't know enough about no limits, but I believe there's a way you can stop yourself, or make it go back up. But the line is set at a certain depth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wild.
But they're wild. They're wild disciplines. Those are the ones that are kind of like over here in my mind.
Right.
But that's just me saying, like, that's how I think of it. Anyway, yeah. So I did the pool. So I did the depth comps. My first depth comp was in I was in Egypt, or it was in Dahab, and I was training with I actually had a coach kind of right away and had a lot of help because that's kind of just everyone talks about freediving. So I was diving and like pretty much every day just because I was so interested in it. And I still wanted to be an instructor at this point, but then there was a competition coming up and progress was good and I was still enjoying it. And they were like, well, why don't you do your first competition? So I enrolled in the competition and then I was, again, like just training every day, getting used to learning a lot, taking like EQ classes and breathing courses and things like that. So really into it. And then I did 55 at my first competition. So 55 meters was my first, I got that on the last day.
55 meters. Mm-hmm. That sounds ridiculous.
Which is
how big is 55 meters?
Like feet wise?
Yeah.
Oh man, I am not sure. 100 and, do you want to check?
I'll bring it up.
You can check.
Yeah.
But the thing is that I believe that a lot of people are capable of it. Our bodies are incredible. We can do incredible things.
180 feet.
Mm-hmm. So that's 180 feet and that's once it's great. It really is a great. Everyone's progress is just fantastic. You know.
I was in the lake the other day trying to hold my breath for longer than 30 seconds, and it was one of the most difficult things I've done in a while. Like I grew up in a pool. My grandparents had a pool and stuff, and like we'd like go under and like swim to that side and then back and then this side and back, and like we'd see who could go the farthest. And so I feel like I could probably hold my breath a lot longer when I was younger. But
yeah,
180 feet is insane for your first dive.
Well, it was. I mean, not my first dive. My first competition. But well, I mean, it's like talking about anything. You know, I was when you're training something. It's like it's like any sport or any activity. You know, it's like of course you're only doing 30 seconds, so you haven't been practicing. You don't know what your body's like. Stop this right now.
And that's the thing with like holding your breath underwater, right? Is like you get to that kind of panic stage where your body's like, what the hell are we doing here? Mm-hmm. And you kind of have to like mentally check that out because, as you said, your body's capable of going way further. Yeah,
it is, but you also have to know when to stop, right?
Right.
But there are things like what triggers that response is a rise of CO2 in your body. It's not lowered amounts of oxygen, but it's that CO2 like almost itching your lungs and telling you, okay, like we need to breathe. So, but then once you recover, say you held your breath for 30 seconds, you started feeling that itch and then you recovered and you're like completely fine. You know, you're not lightheaded, nothing's. So then you're like, okay, I can go longer. And then also you want to achieve like a deeper state of relaxation, like you want to take some time before you do a breath hold and also have someone there.
Of course, somebody for safety.
Yeah, that's been part of the challenge of me being here a bit, was just not having that community anymore. Right. Which I was spoiled. I really was.
Is there a freediving community here in the Okanagan, or?
No, there isn't. Well, I mean, there are some people that I dive with that I know, but nothing concrete in the Okanagan. That was actually what I wanted to do when I first started. I was like, because I knew about freediving from when I first started, and I thought it would do incredibly really well here in Kelowna. So that's what I wanted to do, was become an instructor, come back here and begin teaching. And then things just went crazy.
I'm going to Egypt. I'm staying in Egypt. It's warm all year around there.
Yeah. So anyway, that was that.
Well, and what I saw that you were diving in the Okanagan Lake this past weekend.
Yeah, this weekend I was.
And I think in your post you said that it was much colder, way darker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's not Egypt, is what you're saying?
No, it's not. But I mean, there's a lot of people that freedive and obviously want to train in like the beautiful, warm, light places, but it's like the people, it's like anything. It's you train somewhere more intense, you train somewhere that has like intense thermoclines and that makes you have to focus on relaxing even more so. It's fantastic training for when you actually are in deeper water or like on a competition line, or not even competitions. Like there's not a ton of people that compete.
Yeah.
But just when you're free diving.
And I guess like training in somewhere where it's not necessarily the most ideal conditions, that's going to prepare you for somewhere where there might be better conditions. And I would training in like open water in the sea be more difficult than training in the pool?
Yeah, well, there's these things like currents, you know, like you have currents.
And fish and animals.
Fish. And honestly, I don't, there's open ocean. There's some diving that's like off of a coast, you know, you take a boat out. But it's just, we check wind graphs and you check to see what the water where you're diving, you know, that's why, again, like I said, there's only a few places where like the Philippines and, Egypt and like places like Thailand, and Thailand only has 40 meters of depth unless you take a boat out. So it just depends where you are in the world. Crazy.
Mm-hmm. Are your eyes open when you're under the water?
Sometimes. Yeah, I would say so. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. Generally, they're closed for the majority of the time, but I do open them during certain stages. Like near the end, when I'm grabbing the tag, I open them like near the end of it. So at the end of a line, I have a depth alarm on my watch that tells me when to do certain things on my way down. So at the end, I get an alarm at I like it at 5 meters. I'm told that I should have it around 10, but I don't like breaking my concentration till I absolutely have to, which again, I'm still learning, but that's what I like to do. So I open my eyes and grab the tag, because you grab a tag to show that you've been at the bottom.
I see. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I guess you could cheat and just like.
Well, I mean, you got
went far down there.
I was so far.
I went way past the 70 meters, and I broke a world record today.
So, I mean, that would be hilarious if that was true. But it's no, you have a depth alarm, or you have your watch tells you how deep you went.
I see.
Some people even argue, I've heard, like, do we even need to get the tag? Because it's like a dog fetching a bone. Like, right. Do we need this if we have the alarm or we have the watch to prove it?
And that's probably like a newer piece of technology in the sport, whereas like maybe 10, 15 years ago, they wouldn't have had that.
I mean, I'm curious to know when they started using alarms more, but I feel like they've been around for a little while, but they've definitely gotten deeper and better in the last few years.
Crazy. Well, we're going to take a little quick break.
Okay.
Hear from one of the sponsors, and we'll be right back, people.
All right. Sweet.
All those people behind the camera.
I'm making you proud. I love that you fuck with me now, cause you know I'll keep you around. Yeah, you know that I mean it. Not turning the temperature down. I'm with you when I ain't around. One day together we out. Yeah, you know I mean
we just dinner and then turned into a bunch of tequila, and he told me that the agave plant and tequila, that it was supposed to be like it was the one drink that was like an upper, not like...
Yeah, it is.
Really?
Yeah, blue agave, 100%.
I don't know if I believe that, because it was not for me.
It is true. I've learned that. I remember it because I think about that every time I drink tequila.
Like that's the reason why, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
it's so funny.
Yeah, so...
Well, it didn't work for me. I was hungover as fuck the next day, so...
When was this? Recently?
This was like probably like a month ago.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, so it was recently.
Yeah. All right, ready to rock?
Yeah.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. And we're back from the little sponsor break. I wanted to ask you about some of the practices that you do on land, but more specifically kind of like the mindset that goes into free diving. I feel like there's certain practices out there, like martial arts, where there's almost like a philosophy behind what you do. And when I was learning about freediving, I learned that there was like a lot of kind of mental and kind of spiritual practices with freediving. Do you tap into that at all when you're doing your practice, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a massive, I would say, a pinnacle part of the sport. Not to be, not to be dramatic or anything, but I think that you need some sort of practice if you're gonna do the sport, but at the same time, people are different. The thing that's unique about freediving is how individualized the sport is. You know, there's some people that focus. It's just different. It's a scale of focus. You know, there's people that really. A good example actually would be talking about the competition in Charm. There was someone who has a lot of the Swedish records, and he used to have his own, I believe he was a Zen Buddhist for 11 years. He had his own monastery or his own, he was involved for a long time. And he has all the Swedish records, you know, like, and then there's other guys that are built and they are just like machines, you know, like Alexei Molchanov, he's a machine. And I can't comment on like what he does, but I know that there's different focuses, you know, in diving, and the mental aspect's a huge part of it. Mm-hmm. So, I would say that everyone has their own methods. There's a lot of different mental techniques. It's even like taught in the actual manual, like mental techniques. There's a few of them. One of them that is taught right away is the body scan. That's sort of the best intro into, I don't want to say mindfulness, but in a way mindfulness, or just being getting into your own body a bit and feeling, exactly, getting into presence. So I would say mindfulness, you know, not judging anything. It takes a lifetime to master, but.
Well, what's so interesting about like mindfulness and spiritual practices is like, you work on your breathing a lot when you're doing it, right?
Yes.
Like, do you follow Wim Hof at all, or?
No, I don't actually. I used to I swim in cold water before I left. Actually, that's why I'm happy to say that I could train before I went there. I think that was part of it. You know, I got to prepare. I had the material, and I was swimming in the cold to build up a cold tolerance, because it is connected to your breathing. It's connected to freediving, having a cold tolerance. It's good for circulation.
I take the shower and I just fucking bang at the end of every shower, and I can last for like 30 seconds maybe, but my breathing is like I'm in there. So
well, yeah, there's like different ways of coping with that feeling, you know, so that's part of it too. Any mental training is you can relate it into freediving training, in my opinion. And again, this is all, I could end all of my sentences with my opinion, because this is just how I've learned so far. There's a lot of practices you could do to answer your question. There are different lung stretches. So first of all, there's like the physical, you can do lung stretches. So full and empty lung stretches. It's just a way of expanding the diaphragm, stretching the rib cage, because rib flexibility is important, especially because when you get to depth, the pressure is basically shrinking your lungs, and your rib cage will bend inwards. So flexibility is important to avoid injury.
So do you do like yoga, or like how do you kind of work on the flexibility?
Yeah, there's specific stretches you could do for lung stretching, and then yoga, of course, like anything to do with whatever, like hip openers are really popular. There's a lot of stuff, because when you're freediving, you're bringing your hands up above your head. A lot of us do on the way, or just having flexibility with your shoulders and your back to get your arms, so you can be as streamlined as possible.
Right.
Is part of it.
What's the longest you've held your breath for?
The longest I have held my breath for is 6 minutes and 18 seconds.
Oh my God. That's wild.
It's cool. Yeah, it was.
Do you hallucinate at all when you're down there doing that? Or?
No hallucinations. That's when you know that you should probably stop. Yeah. No, but I did have. I would say I had. You can see the video of it.
I think I did. You're in the pool, right? You're like, they're like tapping to make sure that you're good. Yeah.
And that's another thing too. Is like coach, for example, static. I can't say love, because it is challenging, and it's kind of hell for the last few minutes, especially for the last few minutes of a hold. But it does get to, it familiarizes you with how your mind works and where you hold tension. For me, I would let it, a lot of divers hold tension in their neck and shoulders.
Right.
So even having someone just tell you to relax, like you can see, he's like, relax. Actually, in that, he was saying also like, come on, you can, he's like, you don't want to come up now. And I was like, fuck, okay, I can't come up now. So I liked having someone talk to me, but some people don't.
Right. Yeah.
You know? Some people like to lose themselves in their own process.
Yeah. You see it in multiple sports, how important a mentor that you can trust and rely upon to have your back and who knows you so well that they can go like, yo, you're not done yet. Like, and like that reassurance is just like so helpful sometimes.
Yeah, it's powerful. And it connects to the mind too. Right. And, thing is that before that competition, I had just finished my last one and come back from Sharm. So I really hadn't had a lot of time to train in the pool. But I was diving depth every day. I was really preparing for the depth competition. So there was the Sharm comp, and then that was, and I also want to say there are 2 other divers in Canada that are like killing it right now.
Shout them out.
Yeah, they're like, well, there's Sheena McNally, and she's just broken her own record a few times. She's number 1. She, I believe, just did 88 or 90 meters at vertical blue. I have to check. Damn. And then Matt Duval, he did 94 meters. So there's these people that are doing these. I'm like working towards that point. So that's why I get a little like I'm starstruck by all these people all the time. So I'm very grateful too.
Yeah. Well, so what's the furthest you've gone down then?
67 meters.
67. So you're in the conversation.
Yeah, like I mean, it's great, and now that I'm going to, well, my plan is to go to Cyprus and go to the World Championships, and Sheena won't be competing this year, so I'll be the only female on the team as far as I know, and then it's 3 other male divers. So we're the 4 that got chosen to go, and yeah, and then if that goes well. Well, not if that goes well, then I'll train afterwards. And
sorry, you said that was the World Cup is what it's called?
The World Championship.
The World Championship. Like, and where is that taking place?
It's in Limassol, Cyprus.
Okay.
So it's in Greece.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool.
This is very cool. And I really want to go there for more the experience and to, to grow my ranking and meet all these people and experience it. Mm-hmm. Because I could hold off until I'm possibly next year. And doing further competitions and training more, but the opportunity presented itself, so now I'm looking to go. Well,
and is freediving a young person sport, or is it like
freediving is very cool.
Clearly,
yeah, all the time. Freediving is very cool. The thing that's kind of beautiful about it is the fact that male and female categories, like what is it? The thing is that this all just happened at Vertical Blue a few days ago, all the world records that just got recently set. But one of them, 101 meters, Alessia Zucchini, she set 101 meters for the females. And then there was a 120 meter dive by another female. And then there was a 131 meter by a male. So
I'm getting like anxious just hearing those numbers.
Oh, it's crazy. It is truly crazy. But the thing is that there's 11 meters between those dives. I'm currently number 1 in dynamic, which is pool. So I've done 156 meters on one breath in the pool, and it's 160 for the male. So lung capacity size, it doesn't matter as much as you may think it.
Right. Yeah, because I guess in a lot of sports, it's like people point to like the male sport versus the female sport, and they'll say males can blah, 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 do all this and shit like that. But I guess, in that sport, it's more equalized or a little bit more of an even playing field.
Yeah, it is. It's, like Natalia Molchanov, she was one of the best divers. She sort of founded the Molchanov movement, which is, I'm a Molchanov freediving instructor, just to... Yeah, it's an affiliate. It's an
Can you elaborate on that? What's Molchanov freediving?
So it's like ADA. So ADA's the company, and I don't want to botch this, but it's basically the association that most competitions are under.
Right.
There's one there's SETMA, which is like a different type of competition that's coming around. But there's Molchanov is a way to teach, and it's like a community. It's like we do wave 1, wave 2, lap 1, lap 2. Those are the certification names. And then ADA does like ADA 2, ADA 3. So it's similar information, but it's then in a different way.
And is there different techniques when it comes to like breathing, or is there different techniques when it comes to swimming when you're doing that kind of version of it? Or?
Yeah, like they have different points in each, like, and they have certain material that's covered in one that isn't in another. Anyway, don't have to go into that too much, but there's different associations, but. Man, see, it can just.
Oh, well, it's got to be a giant sport and a giant culture, right? And there's all these intricacies that you know about it, and that's part of the reason why everybody's so fascinated in what you do, is because it's not a sport that is necessarily, everybody doesn't necessarily know about it, and the little tiny details that it takes to be successful in there. So
yeah, it's I think it's just knowledge. It's really one of those things where knowledge is power, So. That's the more you know about yourself, the more you know about the sport, the more you know your limits as well, right?
And so what kind of swimming techniques are you doing? Because I can imagine that when you're swimming, if you're expending too much energy on your technique, it's going to take away from the amount of energy you can create in your body to keep holding your breath, right?
Right. You do only want to engage the muscle groups that you're using.
Okay.
And then, but it's the same as, if you're training for a triathlon, you're not just doing max.
Right.
Like you're not sprinting every day. You're doing intervals, you're doing, you're trying to improve your time in the same duration or in the same length versus like trying to improve your distance, So it's a lot of, like for static, there's something we call like there's CO2 tables, and just for freediving in general. Static's sort of linked to everything because it's about relaxation and
it's kind of like the foundation breathing. To the whole sport, or
I would say something like that. It's doing a static is different because even in a static, like you can hype the people that really know what they're doing and they hyperventilate before. Like when I did mine, I hyperventilated 3 minutes before, which you don't do during depth typically.
You hyperventilated 3 minutes before?
Yeah, so I did 3 minutes of hyperventilation beforehand because, see, what you talked about earlier was like O2, like your O2 sat, like in your blood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So almost all the time it's at 99%, 100%, or not 100%, but it's at 99, which is where it needs to be.
Okay.
So before a dive, you really want to like be as tidal, which means like you don't want to influence your breathing in any way.
Interesting.
Like when you're doing a regular dive, because your O2 is good. You're good. You're just looking for your relaxation and you want to get one big full final breath before your dive. Again, you could get rabbit hole. There's a lot you could get into, but breathing has a
huge part in it.
Huge part
course,
in it.
Yeah.
And you train it like you would train any other sport. Again, you don't just do the deepest dives you can do or do max holds. Yeah.
And so are you doing any like weightlifting outside of training or is there like?
I am, yes. So cardio is not the best for freediving, which is interesting.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Because you don't want your body using oxygen efficiently.
Right, because you want to hold on to as much of it as you possibly can.
So it's like if you've ever, something that's big in diving is, you want to build a CO2 tolerance.
Okay.
So, you have this tolerance for CO2 because the contractions come on because of CO2 and you can grow your tolerance essentially by doing this training. In the gym, I try to breathe I basically try to breathe as little as possible. Like I'll breathe out of my nose. I don't open my mouth when I'm training.
Wild.
Yeah. And then you want to do, if you're doing cardio, you want to do like intervals. So you're not, I guess, getting your blood vessels. I have to confirm on this again, but something about like your blood vessels and the way that they use oxygen, isn't efficient for freediving.
Yeah. Well, so I work with a doctor named Dr. Benjamin Stevens. Mm-hmm. He's a local chiropractor and stuff, and he kind of just schools me on all the shit that I don't know. And so don't attribute anything I'm about to say to Dr. Ben Stevens because he's an actual trained professional and I am not. So I'm just going to kind of like from memory kind of get what he told me because I was asking him, I was saying if he knew anything about free diving and stuff like that, and his wife is also a nutritionist, and he said I should ask you if ketogenics is a nutritional kind of guideline that people follow, because my very basic understanding of how this all goes is that like your body takes oxygen and glucose and it turns it into ATP, which is essentially energy. And when you're doing like a ketogenic diet, your body's basically burning fat and turning it into energy. And so is there like a certain diet that a lot of free divers kind of follow, or is that kind of up for debate?
That's it's almost not for me to say. Right. There, I know some, and I will definitely not say any names. I do know freedivers that don't have the best diets. Are there
rock star freedivers who just like crush whiskey and smoke cigarettes and then go out and dive to 150 meters?
I mean, I don't want to say, I mean,
you don't have to say names, but
essentially
that's kind of cool.
It is. I mean, during training, typically that's not the way that it goes, but yeah, it's very much about your mindset, and you obviously have to be fit for it and learn about it. There's everyone trains, like I said, everyone trains differently. So for me, I mean, most people go, for example, without eating in the morning when they're diving. So I would never eat before I dived. A lot of people say you shouldn't drink caffeine before you dive because it just will, without your control, it'll bring up your heart rate.
Right, of course.
Do the caffeine. But I mean, some people would drink coffee beforehand. Sometimes I would drink beforehand. And so there's definitely ways to optimally live your life, I think, just in general.
Right.
But I think during intense training, maybe not, but yeah, like I would say most freedivers are pretty normal people.
It's at the end of the day, whatever works for you, right? Like everybody's body's different, everybody's mindset's different. And
well, like and I got this tip in a way from someone who taught me my instructor course. He always smiles before he dives. He's always smiling before he's diving. He's doing his breathe up or his relaxation phase, and he's smiling. So there's one other girl, she goes and she like swims on her own. She does a little swim by herself just to get away from everything. And then some people, everyone has their own process. Some people just like lay, and then there's different ways to breathe up. Some people do it on their back. Some people do it on their stomach. Some people do it holding onto the buoy like this, like they're about to fall asleep. It's all, it's all different.
It's whatever works for you. Yeah. That's so interesting. And I mean, it's the same with a lot of sports. Like it's kind of whatever works for you. Like there's certain people that everybody looks up to and they try to follow, but at the end of the day, like you just got to do whatever you find successful and whatever. I mean, I'm sure, what's it called? Placebo kind of takes a giant toll on certain people's minds, or?
I mean, potentially, like I said, there's things with depth, like some people just hit a wall at a certain, like 40 meters or something. And that's just, they know it's 40 meters and that's a wall for them. And you shouldn't do this, but if say you told someone they were going on a 40-meter dive, but you set it to 42 or something, but you didn't tell them that, good chance they'll probably make it. And because it was a mental block.
It was a mental block. Yeah.
For me, it was, I'm actually speaking from personal experience.
Okay.
When I was at my 40 meters, I hit a block. I could not equalize. I could not my mouth fill. I didn't understand it, and I was just starting.
Can you describe what equalize means really quick?
Sorry, yes, I'll describe these things. Equalization is basically when you are equalizing the pressure or you're equalizing your ears from the pressure, the ambient pressure around you. So your eardrum bends inwards, and you are taking air from your thoracic cavity, moving it through the glottis to the nasal cavity, and then you push it to the sinuses, and it opens your middle ear up. So you're doing that the whole way down. The surface is the biggest pressure change, and then you have to equalize like slightly less as you keep going down.
And a feeling of like, correct me if I'm wrong, like unequalization would be like being on a plane, your ears kind of hurt, and you like want to chew gum or something like that to make it pop.
Yeah, so it's like that. It's like when you equalize, you're going down, and if you can't equalize anymore, you will know, and you will just have to turn around.
Right. And so at 40 meters, you were having a mental block.
Yeah, I was doing these drills. I was also learning how to use the nose clip instead of a mask. So the nose clip exposes. It's when you have a clip on your nose so that you're not using your fingers to equalize, because you have to pinch your nose in order to equalize your ears. So I had to use a nose clip, and that means salt water was getting in my eyes. So it was
brutal.
Yeah, but you get used to it, and
right.
which I have now. But I was ready to give up on it. I hated it the first week. I used it especially, and some people, like I said, like they'll have a block for a month or however long, with certain things. But for me, I kept on training it, and I did a lot of drills. Like I would do drills down to 40 meters, just back and up and down, up and down, up and down. And then eventually I got used to it. So yeah, I think, but it was bad for my relaxation at first, but then once I got used to it, it was amazing. Cause then I didn't have to keep my hand up. I could keep my my hands by my side and just
right, with the nose clip.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cause I could imagine if you're like swimming and you have to grab your nose or something like that, it's going to take away from what you're doing.
Exactly.
And so how did you get past that mental block?
I did a lot of, really training your weakness, which I was doing EQ courses. I was taking EQ courses. I was surrounded by people that cared and wanted to help me. And someone said something to me that was, if it's one problem, it's probably something else. And for me, it was relaxation. I wasn't relaxed enough to keep my mouth full. And a mouth fill is when you get past a certain point, your lungs have shrunk so much that you can't bring air up to your ears to equalize them. So right before that point, and freediving is not a sexy sport, really. But you bring air up into your mouth like that, and you're as much as you can really without it being uncomfortable. And then you use the rest of that air to get through the rest of the dive.
Wild.
But that air is shrinking as well. So you have to learn how to use your tongue to move the air and push it into your ears.
That's so crazy. And so did somebody set your depth meter to 42 when it was actually supposed to be 40? Or
No, I actually heard that in a podcast. Funny enough, one girl was talking about how she got past something, and she was it was Sarah Campbell, her name was.
But for you, it was just repetition, just going and going and going and.
Mm-hmm. And then eventually, it started clicking. It was relaxation for me, really. It was I knew I got tense at a certain point, and then I couldn't tell you. I think it was really just easing into a relaxed state, because if you can do this right now, you can do it underwater.
Right. So wait, what are you doing there? You're grabbing your nose and then
it's like if you're on a plane. Yeah, that's normal. That's normal.
That wasn't it, was it? I tried my best.
But it's, you gotta practice.
Yeah. I'll jump in the water and I'll figure it out.
It takes a couple knowledge. It takes a couple steps, and then I really think if I can free dive, anyone can free dive, you know?
That's what I say about directing music videos and films and stuff like that. I'm like, if anybody can do it. Anybody can do it. I don't know if anybody can free dive. I don't think there's a lot of people that can't even swim. So. But anybody can direct. How much does confidence play into your craft and your sport? Because I can imagine it's got to be kind of terrifying to a certain extent if you go too far, right? And so you have to know that you can make it to this depth and that you can get back and you're going to be okay.
When it comes to depth, it's again like anything. It's you progress slowly, or you progress at a pace that works for you. Uh-huh. So, I'm not gonna be like, oh, I can do a 40, so let's bring the line down an extra 10 meters.
Right.
So you work slowly and you're okay. At where I am at right now, 67 is not get me to the point of hypoxia, which is basically a low saturation of oxygen. So I'm not hypoxic on my dives, but what's happening right now for me is that my legs are starting to get to the point where they're so lactic that I'm losing my form. So that's my biggest, everyone has their own challenges, hypoxia is one of them. And that's when you can have an LMC or a blackout, but there's always you have safeties,
right.
And it's a quick recovery.
Yeah.
But anyway, you progress, and then you know your limits, I know what my limits are right now, and then they'll change as I keep diving.
Do a lot of the people you train with black out?
No, they don't. Some of them do. It's kind of, I was in the hub, it was almost normalized a little bit too much.
Right.
Because there were so many higher level athletes.
They're pushing themselves to the absolute limit.
Yeah. And even the people around them that are around the high level athletes that push themselves more than you typically would, you know? So there was a higher cases of blackouts. But at the same time, blackouts are essentially when your O2's at the point where your brain is like, okay, we need to shut her down and we need to save the rest of this for me. And you have what's called a laryngospasm. So your throat closes up and then your safety gets you, brings you up. And then once you're on the surface, your body reacts to the wind on your face, the like stimulus of someone talking to you, and you wake up.
Wild. Yeah, and you always have a safety with you when you dive?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's very taboo to dive alone.
You posted a video of a group of like what I guess they wouldn't even be, would they be scuba divers or snorkelers? Snorkelers is the word I was looking for. And you were doing like a deep dive, and then you're coming up, and your safety was like swimming and kind of like blocking them from stopping you. Like that's kind of wild that they were even out there.
That was the blue hole. Oh, sorry. That was the blue hole. So that was in Egypt. And there's a lot of tourists in that area too, because it's a beautiful reef. The cove, it's this, I don't exactly know why it appeared or why it's there, but the coral runs all the way down the side and it's gorgeous. So there's a lot of tourists like from different parts of Egypt, especially. And yeah, I was diving there. And there were always snorkeler invasions. So we would have to we'd always have to like push them away. And that was one of my dives where there was like an armada of snorkelers coming and he had to shoo them off.
Ugh, wild. I can't, yeah. If only they knew what was happening.
Exactly. I'm like
right at that buoy that you were at.
Yeah. And it's crazy because it's like looking at training lines when they're all lined up in my also, I think I maybe see the beauty in this a little bit more than someone who's been doing it for longer. Maybe not. But when I look at all the training lines, it's just like looks so serious and beautiful. Like seeing all the divers go up and down and the safeties go up when there's a whole string of them, because the hub was so popular with freediving. Yeah.
Are you a visual person? Like
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break, but I want to talk about that when we get back, because some of the photography that was taken when you were in Egypt is some of my favorite photography that I've seen in a while out of the Okanagan. So I'd love to get into that a little bit.
Sweet. Okay.
Okay. Well, we'll see you in a minute.
I could be anywhere and still feel like I'm with you. I am so into you. Yeah, you know I mean it. Yeah, you know I mean it.
I'm the same. Like I'm still getting used to talking
on the gram, on the
cam. Well, even my sponsor, like Alchemy, they had me make a video today for them to review one of their products, and it took me so long.
Who is Alchemy?
Alchemy is my sponsor, one of my sponsors. So they make carbon fins.
And what's the full name? Alchemy Hellas. And they make carbon fins.
They do carbon fins and other equipment. And then I have a wetsuit sponsor, which is Elios Sub, and they do my wetsuits.
And were those like two brands that you were like, hell yeah, I want these people to sponsor me?
Yeah, they were. Damn. They were. I didn't think to ask for a sponsor. Are we going right now?
Oh yeah, we're. I tricked you.
So I've got Alchemy and I've got Elios, and I never thought I would really be sponsored. Again, this all kind of happened as a snowball. So when I was originally asking for sponsors, they seemed out of reach, but then I was reinforced by some other people, do it. Just do it. And you never know. You might, worst thing you can say is no, or they can say is no. And then I got quite a few responses back for sponsors. So Alchemy and Elios were a dream.
Wow. Yeah. I love the content that they put out. And that leads me into the content that you had been posting from Egypt. Is some of the most beautiful photography I've seen in a while, and definitely to come out of the Okanagan. Can you kind of elaborate on some of the things that were going down with like was there a guy in a scuba suit and like whole fucking tank and like giant rig? Like what was going on?
Yeah, no, it was exactly that. No, it was freedivers. It was other freedivers that were into photography.
Wild. They're so talented.
They are. It's incredible. It's incredible. Like freediving photography is something that, or underwater photography is just its own world. Even the fact that light is so distorted underwater, it makes it a whole new challenge. From what I've heard, it's a completely different challenge than taking photos above the water.
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the things that I was and why I was so interested in your journey and what you've been doing is like I've always had such a deep admiration for underwater photography, like nature photographers and stuff like that. Like Paul Nicklin is somebody that I look up to like heavily. He's taken a lot of photos of like coastal wolves and like narwhals and like the coast and all that kind of stuff. And I've never worked with underwater camera operators before, but I can imagine it's just a whole nother thing. Like,
I mean, it is. Everyone has their own process, you know? But with who I was shooting with, there were a few different photographers, but generally we'd go for a fun dive, or we'd plan it roughly, but it's hard to plan when you're underwater.
Well, yeah, they can't direct you like they can maybe point or whatever, but
there's no pointing. It's sort of like a rough. I mean, from when I was doing it, it was like a rough. Okay, we're gonna do this, and we're gonna go to the bottom, interact, and figure it out. You know, so I love doing the photography, and it's a lot of FRC. Also, there's something called RV or FRC. So like basically not taking a full breath or exhaling all of your air completely.
Okay.
Because when you're doing photography, sometimes you're because you have air in your lungs, you go back to the surface. So you're doing a lot of these. You
float a little bit.
Yeah. So it was, I think, very beneficial for a lot of these photographers because they got to work with these freedivers who are familiar with. They could make themselves neutral at around 8 meters, which most people would float up, you know, or something like that. So we would empty our lungs out and take the photos.
Crazy.
And yeah, so a lot of the photographers, they're kind of exhausting. The shoots were a lot of, you know, you don't want to exhaust the photographer by going deep. So,
right.
You know,
are the photographers, they must not be as trained as
I would. It depends. Right? I mean, where I was in Dahab, and it was like there were some real pros there. So they were all very familiar, and all of them free dive themselves. The ones that I worked with, except for one, I did work with a scuba diver once, and it's actually so interesting to see how someone who doesn't know how to do breath hold training, like how them taking photos. Because they have to resurface all the time,
right? So
it's such a huge skill, like for any photographer.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Did they have a specific like time of day that they wanted to shoot at? Because I'm sure if you've worked with a photographer on land, it's like golden hour is kind of like a time to shoot.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of the same underwater. I mean you get these rays of light at certain times of day that are beautiful, but usually, I mean, typically dives just happen in the morning. It depends on the current. Like if there's a high tide or something, or if there's a big swell, then sometimes we won't dive in the morning. We'll wait till the afternoon. It just depends on the tide. But usually the morning's the best because no one's eaten yet. And it's harder to do a breath hold when you've eaten and your digestive system's doing its thing.
Mm-hmm. And it seemed like at least the most recent photography that you've posted, you were diving with somebody else.
Yeah, I was diving with my roommate.
Okay.
She actually is a Swedish national record holder. Again.
Oh, wild.
They're everywhere.
The Swedes, huh?
Yeah. No. Sorry, Switzerland, not Swedish.
Switzerland,
She's from
okay.
Switzerland. Oh man, she'd kill me if I said that.
Uh-oh.
But I dove with her a lot, and she was an instructor there, and then just it was whoever, you know, like it was just a big community of friends.
Right.
So yeah, it was whoever wanted to do it.
Is there a difference between? There's got to be some when you're doing competition and you're diving or even training compared to when you're doing the photography side of it.
Oh, completely. I mean, it's really just your fun dives and your technique's not right. And
right.
You're interacting with someone else, and it's totally different. I mean, training obviously gets you primed for it, but yeah, it's so different.
Wild.
I like doing photography. It was the photos that came out were beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
There was, yeah.
And they weren't shooting with a GoPro or anything.
No, they usually had their own underwater housing and they had their own setups.
Wild.
So, yeah, it was very, yeah, it was really a lot of fun. And again, they were also welcoming. The whole community is so welcoming. So that's why I really encourage people to get into it. When I first got into it, it was me just messaging people. I was like, just message as many people as possible. And that's been my young life hack is just talk to people. And that's how you can get connections, you just get little bits of information all over the place. And
I did the exact same thing when I got into photography and filmmaking. I went to a website called OSIF, the Okanagan Society of Independent Filmmakers, and anybody who described themselves as a director, cinematographer, or producer, I just emailed them and I was like, whatever you need, I'm your guy. Like if it's fucking, taking garbages out, bringing food, sandwiches, whatever. And yeah, that kind of mentality I think has done me well, and it's done a lot of people well in their own chosen crafts. What was Egypt like? And like did you get a lot of time to venture outside of the free diving community?
No.
Did you see the Great Pyramid at all? Or
I didn't. I was such a little
chamber underneath the Sphinx left, right, fucking paw?
Yeah, I found the pharaoh's coffin. It's got $10 billion of gold.
Damn. I've always known there's some aliens going on there and stuff.
I'm like, that's really why I went there.
Yeah, you wanted to meet the aliens.
Yeah.
Man, I've brought aliens up on the past 4 podcasts I've done. People are probably
really
thinking I'm insane at this point.
Well, I mean, Egypt is alien city, so.
Are you serious?
I mean, people talk about the pyramids and it comes up when you, but that's in Cairo. I was not,
right.
I've only been in Cairo for a little bit of time.
How far was Dahab is where you were?
Yeah.
And how far away was that from Cairo?
7 hours. I actually, when I first got there, it was a 2-day trip, and I when I first got there, I'd already been traveling for I don't remember how long, over a day and a half. And I had another 12-hour layover in the Cairo airport to wait for my next flight. And I was like, I can't. So I took a taxi, and it turns out it was the most dangerous part of the Sinai.
Oh my God.
And I took a taxi from midnight to 7 a.m. and I rolled into
probably the most dangerous time.
Jesus. I was clutching my bags the whole time. And that's what my friends told me I knew my instructor when I first got there, and he was like, oh, how'd you get here early? And I told him I took a taxi. And he was like, this is the most dangerous part of the Sinai.
Oh my God. Did your travels in Thailand and stuff kind of prepare you to do that?
I guess it made me ignorant enough to take a taxi. It definitely grew my ignorance. Yeah. So a little bit. I remember that same thing happened in Vietnam. I went to Vietnam too. And I had a similar experience where I just had to take a taxi, and I was getting moved around by the guys, and they were talking a language I couldn't understand. And anyway, but I made it, and I actually, when I first got there, it was 7 a.m, and I stumbled into a restaurant that was right on the water, and it turns out that was where my instructor and everyone dived out of.
Oh, so no way!
That was the exact restaurant that
you were supposed to be at.
I spent months there. So,
wild,
yeah,
wild. And so you didn't get a venture outside of the kind of, was it a resort, would you call it, or? No,
it was just a town. If you look up Dahab, if you look at any of the videos, or it's a smaller town on the coast of the Red Sea. And there were people there for different reasons. There's a lot of people that are sort of holistic, very holistic people there. Yeah, I could go on about it. It's really like a freediving utopia.
Right.
But there's so many other places that was the beginning for me, so that's what Dahab is.
Wild. Yeah. I haven't traveled as much as I'd like to. Most of my kind of traveling experience has been, to the US, to LA or Florida, whether with family or with some projects or something that I have going down there. But my goal is definitely to go to Egypt. and definitely to go to Thailand and definitely go to
copying me?
Europe. Yeah, I'm copying a little bit. Yeah, maybe that's why I'm so fascinated in your stories, because I'm
You're
just like,
this is my idea.
yeah. Well, Egypt, especially in like the pyramids, I really, really want to see. But
I wanted to see them. I just didn't have enough time, unfortunately. When
Yeah.
I was only there for a few days, and I was busy.
yeah, was it a big culture shock being in Egypt?
Yeah. It's a Muslim culture. It's
Yeah.
different. I didn't really quite know, because there were just enough tourists there that you could dress how you dress here. But I there were times where I wanted to be more modest, or you can really see that the men are the ones that are going out to work every day. So you're interacting. In my day, I was interacting with like very few women.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a different culture, but it's you're coming into their world, right? You
Right.
know, like I've always had that opinion of you're coming into their world and you want to respect where you are with anything, really.
Yeah.
I think I've been doing things and always I've always been younger. So I've always, I've always kept an arms, kept respecting wherever I am or whatever I'm doing, just because I'm always with people that are more experienced than me.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Are you a bit of a rebel? Are you a bit of like a button pusher? Like you want to kind of...
I don't know if I push the buttons, but I definitely go places that I don't know. I'd like to do things at my own pace, and I guess I'm moving at a pretty fast pace right now.
Nice. Is that part of the appeal of free diving? Is like the adventure
I think
to it?
I think you'd be lying if you said no. I mean, the lifestyle is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that it is hard work, and it's a physical job. So, you want to keep yourself at a certain pace, so otherwise you burn out. But yeah, part of the appeal is the fact that you're doing something that feels incredible. It feels like you're exploring the human race. Like you're exploring humans. Yeah. You're in this place that no one ever has been, or a place that no one really ventures to. And yeah, I think it's all.
Well, you mentioned like surfing and surf culture a little bit at the beginning, and like surf culture definitely kind of has its roots in being like, this is my secret little swell that I've found. And like, unless you're like, what's the word they use? A kook, I think. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so.
Like, no kooks allowed. Like you got to be a legit surfer to kind of come into my swell and stuff like that. Is like, and like this is like my spot. I feel like free diving would probably have a similar culture.
It really does, and especially like I came into it, and luckily I think that your attitude matters a lot when you come into certain places like this. I feel like I was very open minded, and I came into it and everything built. It wasn't like I had this huge expectation that I was working towards, or I'm still working towards. It was just things are progressing as they are. And I'm just planning a few steps ahead, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Do you think that the human body is designed to dive to the depths and that you're doing and free dive to the extent that you are?
I mean, we are. That's just it.
Yeah.
We are like, we have these reflexes in us. They're the history of it. If you ever wanted to check out the history of people diving without air or without extra oxygen, it's incredible. I mean, your body really, like, there's certain communities that have been doing this for a long time, pearl divers and stuff, the Yama, that have been doing this, and their spleens are bigger, they've evolved
to a certain extent.
And they have different, like, their capacity for doing this is different. So
because I shoot a lot of fitness courses, and like one of the courses that we shot was like the fundamental movements of the human body, and it was like push, pull, I can't even remember half of them anymore. But it was like these fundamental movements. And when I was doing a little bit of research before you came onto the podcast, it was I was reading about like all the way back to Socrates writing about divers that would go down and collect sponges and stuff like that for bathing and stuff. And then even as far as like, I remember watching a documentary where like there was like this group of people somewhere in South America, I believe, where they were just like master divers. Like they're like, I feel like they had like long, like probably like larger spleens and a more of a lung capacity.
Yeah.
Like it's interesting how you can kind of evolve to that extent to.
You can. And there's also things like injury, like DCI is something that they get a lot, decompression illness, from going up and down so many times your body.
And what is decompression illness?
Man, it's basically when you're experiencing, I don't want to botch it, but you experience these levels of pressure, and you're not taking enough time at the surface, like you're not taking a long enough surface interval. So basically what's happening is that your body doesn't have time for the nitrogen to dissolve. Or the nitrogen bubbles aren't able to, oh my goodness. It's something to do with the nitrogen in your body not being able, it creates bubbles in your joints and things like that. And it's something to avoid. Again, I wish I could. Well,
and I can imagine the science behind all this stuff
There's
isn't
a lot
like
of,
super well studied, right? Like,
well, your body just, it's like studying anything that your body does, like anatomically. There's diffusion is the word I'm looking for. Like the different gases in your blood diffuse in different ways, and there's a lot to understand. That's why like knowledge is really important when you're diving. You know, like even knowing what your body's doing and why it's doing it can put you at ease.
Well, I hate to put you on the spot, but if there's one piece of advice you can give to hopefully the many free divers that are about to blossom from the Okanagan,
Of course,
after this podcast, what advice would you give them?
Oof. Let's think here. I want to say that knowledge, like the more you know, the better. That's not good.
That is good. Sounds like you're saying like surround yourself with people that know what the fuck they're doing.
I think so. I think that the more that you understand about it, the better you'll do. I would say just progress at your own rate, really. And progress at your own rate. Take the courses if you want to do it. If you want to do it properly, take the courses. And I swear it's like the benefit, it goes way outside the realm of freediving. Just knowing how your body works. Even the fact, like, understanding how to take a full breath. You know, people don't understand their lung capacity. So I think just the fact that you learn about yourself so much and you learn about how your body reacts and how strong you really are, it can be incredibly confident. It can be an incredible confidence builder.
100%. I didn't learn like breathing techniques until very recently in my life. And like whenever I'm going on a first date, like I literally take like 6 big deep breaths through my nose, out through my mouth. I'm sitting in my truck and I just like zen out. And my friend Kevin, he's probably watching this. He makes fun of me for it all the time, but I'm saying it again. So what's next for you? What's next?
Well, right now I'm training full time and I'm looking for funding for my next trip, and I want to attend the next World Championships, and then I'll train afterwards. So it'll be hopefully the competition, and then I'll train for 5 to 7 months, come back to Kelowna or go wherever, and then I'll be training for the World Champs of 2022.
Wild.
Yeah. So
Wild.
that's my plan, really, if you ask me. But again,
saying world champ just like hypes me up. I'm
Me
like, we're
too.
the
I'm like,
world champs over here.
yeah. Well, it's very, again, it's all very new to me, and but I'm ready. I'm ready to put myself there. So. And
where can people find you online to help support, maybe throw you some funding if they so feel inclined to help you continue this dream and this journey?
Well, my Instagram is just my name with 2 underscores on each side, Cassandra Cooper. I'm sponsored by Alchemy and Elios, but you can find my athlete's profile on Alchemy. And if you go on ADA, you can see my ADA rankings. So still figuring out funding right now. Might reach out to the community for some support, but we'll see.
Sweet. Well, we'll make sure all those links and descriptions are in the bio. And Cassandra, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. Thank you.
you.
I'm excited to see what you do in the future.
Me too. Honestly. Thank you so much for having me.
Wicked. All right, people. We're out.
You always feel not dramatic. Look at you.
Done.